There are other ways to align elements on your page which doesn't require grid. Remember, we have block elements and inline elements. Each block element flows vertically down the page with a new line for each element. Inline elements will flow one after another horizontally. To align these elements is a little different than how we align elements in a grid. The same CSS we use in the grid to align things doesn't work with elements that are not in a grid. So let's look at some code similar to what you'll see in your assignment. This page has 5 different elements with 3 paragraphs in each element. We want it to look something like this, so we're going to be needing to do some alignments on the sections and the paragraphs. Let's look at the code. If we look at the right-click and get the source code from this page, we can see those 5 different elements with class names block 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to grab this entire code here, copy it, and just paste it into a new project inside of Glitch. And I'll just go ahead and use that same code for the index page, the home page. And I'll go ahead and grab everything here and then paste in what I had from the other page. Okay, so we do have a little bit of CSS here. We have the content div, which pretty much wraps all the content. I have put that at 1,000 pixels just to give it a width. 300 pixels, which will only at the maximum have 3 of those sections within that 1,000. So it will definitely fit inside of there. We've given the section a width because sections are block level elements. If we don't give them a smaller width than what's available, the 1,000, they would have taken all of that 1,000 because that was the parent. So we do have a width to make them a little smaller, which will then let some of our aligning work that we'll use here in a minute. They do have a background color of light blue and a little bit of padding. Okay, so right now we can see that each of the elements are default left aligned. So if we look at what we want here, we already can see that this one's already left aligned. So we're going to leave that one alone. Block 3. So we have block 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So block 3 we're just going to leave alone. Block 2 and 4 we need to center. And blocks 1 and 5 we're going to right align. So let's see how we're going to do that in code. We need to target on just those. So we're going to use class names. And we're going to say dot block 2 and block 4. And remember, we can now center with margin 0 auto because we've given it a width that's smaller than what it can possibly, smaller than its parent. So 0 is top and bottom, auto fits in the left-right portion, so any space left over after that 300 is going to go to the left or right evenly. And so that's what this margin 0 auto. We could have even just put margin auto and it would have done the same thing. Okay, block 1 and block 5. Remember, we wanted to right align, and this is a little more rare. We haven't seen much of this one, but we can say margin left auto, and that's saying to automatically take all the space that's left over and put it on the left, which in effect is really going to shove our content over to the right. So let me reload. Okay, so there we go. We have block 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 2 and 4 were centered with margin 0 auto. 1 and 5 had that margin dash left auto, which gave all the automatically left part of that to the left, and therefore the blocks were on the right. All right, now we need to look at the paragraphs because they should be aligned like that. Going from right, center, left, right, center, left, right, center, right, left, right, left, center, right, left, center, right. Okay, so it kind of makes a V there. So let's take a look at what we need to do to align the paragraphs. Now, if you look at W3 Schools, we do have an nth of type. So the code in here, let's go back to Glitch. You'll see we have 3 paragraphs in each section. So instead of going in here and giving, class, block 1, P1, or whatever, we can actually say nth of type. And that just means for each parent, we're going to have nth of type 1, nth of type 2, nth of type 3. Nth of type 1, nth of type 2, nth of type 3. And then we can just say of the similar elements that were within that parent, we can point to them in that way. So it's kind of a cool CSS way to do that. So we can see that we need to give each, well, let's look at, that's the one that's finished. Here. We need to do each middle line, every single one of the second nth of type 2 is centered. So let's go ahead and start with that one. So we're going to say the element we want to look at, the paragraphs, nth of type 2. And then we want to say text align center. And remember, text align works well with any text. So that one should center out all of our paragraphs. So reload there, and there it goes. They centered all of them. Okay, now we can see in our finished one, we want at least the first 3 blocks to have the right alignment. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do that right alignment. So we can say P nth of type. The first one, we want to have the text align right. Let's take a look at that. And now we can see these first, well, all of them have a text align 1. Now, these ones all look right for the first part of the V. But from here, 9 should be here, and then these are going to reverse the first and second line. So the 10 is going to be on the left, 13 is on the left, 12 on the right, 15 on the right. So if we look at our picture, that needs to change from that to that. So let's take a look at that. Now, we don't want to mess up the third lines and the first lines of the ones we've already done. So we need to be very specific about which block we're looking at. And we're going to be using the Descender CSS to do this, saying just look at the certain block for each one of these. Okay, so blocks 3, 4, and 5 are going to have that last line aligned to the right. But we don't want to change the third line in block 1 and 2 because they're already in the right spot. So let's make sure we get the P nth of type 3 from the right blocks. So we're going to have to target in on just the blocks that we want to have those changed. So that's block 3, and then that's the P nth of type, third line, and block 4's P nth of type for the third line as well, and block 5's P nth of type 3. So we've got blocks 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4, and 5's third one, and we're going to go ahead and I'll make sure we align that, text align, and then we're going to make sure that's right. Okay, so now we can take a look with ours and see that they all went over there. So now everything's right except for 10 and 13 to be left aligned. So that's blocks 4 and 5. Whoops, that's a dot block. for P of type 1 and block 5 P nth of type 1 as well is going to have the text align of left. So these are more specific, so they're overriding some of the early alignment that we had with the other ones. So let's take a look now and make sure that that went over. So now we have the perfect V, just exactly what we wanted. So you will see something similar in your paragraphs. Okay, I hope this helped realize how we can align sections and paragraphs even if we aren't using a grid.